Yeah, I was real interested to see that after the game myself. And honestly, what I saw, and as an Eagle fan, I think you should be happy to hear that what I saw were people who care. I mean, the players care. They care that they're, 1-3, and it's not like they're mailing it in at this point, a quarter of the way through the season and thinking that they're counting themselves out. They care. I saw a lot of hurt. I saw guys who were disappointed and frustrated just in body language. But what I did see was guys that care, and I really heard I expected to start seeing the beginnings of the crack in the foundation, the beginnings of finger pointing, and I didn't even really get a big sense of guys who were taking the blame on their own shoulders. It was real interesting hearing Connor Barwin talk about how, the defense has nobody to blame but themselves for the amount of plays that they were out there, which is an interesting take on it because it's easy to look at it and say, the offense is going 3 and out. Those guys are back out there. And he's saying, well, we've gotten them into third downs and we're not getting off the field. So that's on us.
Yeah, I agree. I've said a couple times with the time of possession stuff, Scott, that, look, the Eagles' defense has opportunities to change that and make it a little bit more, less extreme because they have chances to get off the field too. By no means am I throwing the defense out there saying that they're the reason why the team's losing, but there are more plays for the defense to make, too, that, quite frankly, they're not making either. While they've been good, they haven't been great in terms of getting to the quarterback. You got to be able to force Kirk Cousins to turn the ball over at least once or twice in that game.
That's what I kept saying in the second half. I was thinking, boy, Cousins is due for one of those costly turnovers anytime now, and he floated a few in the air, and they just never got under him, the Eagles did. But, but I sense that these guys are still together, and with what happened, I mean, they are only one game out of first, which is amazing.
It is, and obviously, that is the narrative is going forward here. If you want to have some positive spin on it, is, hey, you're only one game back. Let me look at Grayson's grades yesterday. We'll start from the bottom. Sturgis got an F, and obviously you miss a 33-yarder, you miss an extra point. That's just unacceptable. And as Chip Kelly said today, hey, we are 2 kicks away, realistically, from being 3-1. Were you surprised today, Scott, that Caleb Sturgis has remained a Philadelphia Eagle?
I am, and it makes me wonder then how bad the other kickers were that he brought in to try out last week. If this guy went out there and did what he did, and you're going to say that it cost you the game, which is what you're saying when you say 2 kicks put you at a different situation, then how do you not fix that problem by making a change? I mean, look, Sturgis had a shot. He blew it. Now he's going out there, and, I mean, he's going to be tight when he kicks the next one, too, next week. So I just don't know why you expect that to change, really, and I was shocked that he wasn't an Eagle for one game, and that's it.
Well, and obviously Chip Kelly kind of threw him and every other kicker under the bus today. He said, quite frankly, we're going to keep him because the state of kicking in the NFL is so bad that we can't find anybody else, so we'll just stick with Sturgis. So that being what it is, Sturgis is still here. Let's move up to the D category. That's where you find Chip Kelly. Some people would say he was a bona fide F. How did he get out of the failing category?
Because he actually took shots downfield for a change, and they worked. And so I thought, well, here's a guy who at least changed his format slightly to at least go deep on occasion. And to me, that was at least nice to see. I was really frustrated, as I'm sure a lot of Eagle fans were, with when you started to get things going. I really can't stand when coaches try to put it on their defense to have to win the game for them once they have a slim lead. Why not keep the gas pedal down and extend a 1-possession game to a 2-possession game? Make that much easier on your defense. And I was really frustrated that, to me, he got really conservative and in my opinion, showed a lack of confidence in his offensive players to try to keep moving the ball downfield.
Scott Grayson's with us. Grayson's grades are at 97.3 ESPN.com. The offensive line also got a D, and obviously I would keep them out of the F area too because of the movement and the injuries up there, but quite frankly they have D talent on that offensive line right now.
They do, and I mean, when you see a guy like Jason Peters go off the field, who's been one of your most consistent offensive linemen, he's one of the best in the league, has been, and I mean, here's a guy who you just look at age taking its toll on him, and I looked at him in the locker room. I did ask him if he was going to be back next week, he thinks, and he seems positive about that. But I think what we're seeing is a guy who's really struggling to finish a game, and I'm going to be shocked if he does finish one here in the next couple of weeks because he's getting up there in age, and that's not his fault. It happens to all of us, and I mean, they're going to have to really start looking for – I mean, they got to fix holes this year, but what are you going to do in the future? I mean, they're really hurting on offensive line, obviously, and with the injuries that are taking their toll once again, like last year, they just don't have the pieces to plug in.
No, and this goes back to the draft the last couple of years, Scott. You know as well as I do, Lane Johnson's the only offensive lineman that Chip Kelly's regime or era has ever drafted. They have one drafted offensive lineman in 3 years. How do you build depth that way? And quite frankly, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know that they've signed anybody really in free agency other than Alan Barber.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I was thinking last night, they've got all these nice pieces, all these shiny toys to play with in the backfield, and with Sam Bradford, for example. But if you can't protect him, if you can't open holes for these guys, unless you have Barry Sanders in the backfield who can ditch tackles like he's, walking around out there in quicksand with everybody else out there. I mean, they don't have a guy like that, and it doesn't matter who they have at running back. You could have LaShawn McCoy, you could have whoever you want back there, and it's not going to make a difference right now if this offensive line cannot keep from getting pushed back at the snap of the ball.
Well, you gave Murray a C, and I'm a little surprised by that. I mean, he had the big run, but other than that, he was a pretty much non-factor in the game. Matthews got a C as well. The three running backs as a unit, you kind of gave them an average grade yesterday, which I guess with the offensive line, for them to get any yards is a positive.
Yeah, it's really a curved grade was the way I was looking at it, because you got a guy like DeMarco Murray who needs to feed off of repetitive carries. He gets 8 carries. Hard to blame him for that. Ryan Matthews, same thing. Last week, what worked well for him, getting a healthy dose of carries. He had 5 carries. Hard to blame him for that. Darren Sproles, I'm going to give some grief to because he had some drop passes. Now, granted, the one was thrown behind him, not totally his fault. And he got a C, in my opinion, because he had that nice punt return that really helped his grade. But hard to blame those guys when the offensive line in front of them is really not doing its job to allow them to do theirs.
Scott Grayson's grades posted in the B category. We'll go up the list to Sam Bradford. I want to get your thoughts. How he looked, and I know he got the ankle taped up. He got banged up a bit yesterday, but from your vantage in the press box, which I understand at FedEx Field's not the greatest view in the world, but they did take some shots down the field. Why were they not taking more opportunities? Did you see more openings down the field? Were guys open?
Yes and no. I mean, they weren't pushing it until that second half. And once they started taking it, look, if a Riley Cooper is going to be open downfield, you must be doing something right to fool that secondary a little bit. And I thought that there were chances, and I didn't understand why once it was working, why they didn't continue to exploit that. Because once it was there, they should have really taken 1 or 2 more shots, and it probably would have helped the running game because they would have had to start respecting the fact that they're throwing the ball downfield. And I thought, honestly, Sam Bradford looked the most comfortable and the most consistent when he had the chance to step into a throw, because he knew he had to on that front knee. Step into a throw and put it downfield. I thought he looked most comfortable that he's looked all season long when he was throwing those deep balls.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You've seen him. You've been at virtually every single game, I believe, right? You've been at every game?
Yeah.
So, other than Atlanta. You weren't in Atlanta. Right. But the 3 games that you've been to, was that the most confident of a thrower that you've seen from Bradford?
Yeah, I thought that was the most confident that he's looked when he had the chance to step up, throw it downfield, and let his receivers run under it. To me, that was my big takeaway from Bradford, was that's where he is. And when he throws those little ones across the middle of the field, sometimes he has a hard time judging on, it looks to me, to lead his receiver, or he's afraid to because of where the defense might be playing. There, he knows he just has to lead his receiver under the ball, and he's looked perfectly confident doing it.
Do you sense a really frustrated Chip Kelly?
Yeah, there's a guy who, here's a defeated guy when he comes out to meet the media after a game. He's done it 3 times now this season. He's not used to doing that repeatedly. And you go back to last season, he's really done it a lot. And he's a guy who I sense is frustrated. I don't sense that he is ready to throw in the towel. I don't sense that he is beyond fixing this or repairing it. But I also, we got tired of hearing Andy Reid a lot say, this is my fault, this is my fault. It's almost like I want to hear Chip Kelly come out and say, it's my fault. I'm not calling the game well offensively, and I have to fix that.
The old grass isn't greener on the other side all the time, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, we'll see. I know a lot of injuries in this division. Deshaun Jackson, now Jordan Reed for the Redskins as well. A couple big-time injuries there. D'Angelo Hall So the Redskins have their own injury problems. We know Dallas has injury problems. Philadelphia, multiple injury problems with Lane. Did you see Lane Johnson after the game last night, Scott?
Yeah, I did see him in the locker room, and I thought he looked okay to me. I didn't see anything that looked troubling.
Yeah, I mean, I know they mentioned MCL, that he should play this week, but MCL and maybe even an ankle sprain as well. I know in the Comcast broadcast after the game last night, he was doing an interview, and they were commenting that during the interview that he was literally leaning up against the wall to hold himself up because he appeared, that he had some problem with the sprain. He was diagnosed with a sprained MCL and ankle today, but, I was wondering if it appeared that here's a guy limping around, or did he look to be significantly injured in that locker room?
He didn't look it to me, but when I saw him, he was sitting at his locker.
Okay.
He was not in the training room. He was not looking like he was getting extra attention. To me, he was just sitting at his locker and, trying to get ready to head back home to Philly. I didn't see anything noticeable. Like you would expect a guy who might be in a lot of pain, or he's usually with the trainers until the last minute to get on the bus. I didn't see that out of him.
Okay, well, I was good to hear that, obviously very, I would assume like a quiet atmosphere in there, almost a lot of guys just complete disbelief, but no pointing the finger. I liked Aguilar. Seemed like a very positive guy. I mean, at least, it sounded like a young kid who was not defeated by the fact that they lost. So I guess some positive attitudes in that locker room moving forward, but we'll see what they can do with these injury problems. So Scott Grayson, of course, read all Grayson's grades over at 97.3 ESPN.com. The Eagles host the Saints, and Scott will be there at Lincoln Financial Field for what is a very much a must-win game with Drew Brees, who looked pretty good last night. All right, Scott, we'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good, Mike. Thank you.